I want to share with you a short story of what happened to me and the miraculous power of the gospel and what it can do to a human heart that says yes. The gospel can be summed up in one word, and that's come. I grew up in central Victoria in a really, really rough rural community, and it was really cold. Occasionally it would snow in the winter, and our high school was so rough that when there was fights, the police divvy vans couldn't actually make themselves to get to the fights because the kids would surround a ring around their fights while they would be extremely violent. So this culture of violence that I saw at school was paralleled with at home, having my father be part of the bikie gang scene and all the stuff that accompanied that. It was one awful situation after the next with all sorts of things that you would see in growing up in an environment where people just love pleasure and sin, and the result of that was a broken home, a divorced family, and as a result, as a 13-year-old, naturally I just progressed into selling drugs and being promiscuous as well with lots of girlfriends and all that sort of thing that happened that lead from one thing into the next to stealing a car and then rolling it down the embankment and running away from the crime scene, and one thing led after another. But one thing with my story that is a bit different is that my neighbour was a Christian and a praying lady, and she would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, get beside her bed, and she would intercede and pray for the kid down the road who had just been suspended for an entire term at school, which was me. And little did I know that her prayers of faith were really doing miraculous things. I eventually got expelled from school for dealing drugs, and one thing led to another, and just to fast forward a few years forward, I was in India traveling with friends who were DJs from Melbourne that played with some really big international acts, and they went up to India to play at the dance parties, and there's 7-day dance parties in the jungle, and to stay awake for 7 days, people just have a cocktail of whatever they would have and continue that lifestyle of dancing. And the tsunami had come through when we were there, but we were so involved in our parties, we saw the bridge washed away, we didn't realise, and we'd never even heard the word tsunami until I got to an internet cafe and I replied to my friend, yes, I'm alive, and secondly, what's a tsunami? And so I went to Thailand. They said, you're a film student. They said, you better get to Thailand and film this tsunami thing and volunteer. So I went to Thailand, and it was there in Thailand I got a sense of my own mortality as a human. There was 10,000 people in a body temple around that in Kolak, the area I was working, near the Ban Nam Kem province there, about 2 hours north of Phuket. And at the body temple and the orphanage and the refugee camp, I really got a sense of my own mortality as a human and really, really, really got stirred. And I'll never forget the day. It was a really hot, sunny day. It was the 27th of January 2005, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, I was riding my motorbike down the road. And I was going quite slow on my bike, so I got the wobbles, and I just fell this way. And as I was falling into the highway, I felt something pull my body. My body just flinched like this. And a truck clipped me on the back of the ear at full speed on the freeway, and it clipped me, and it came so close as the bumper bar of the truck clipped me, it hit the peg of my motorbike. It just clipped the peg. I got blown through the air, and I landed on the ground, my back, and I felt waves of love go through me, and I couldn't stop crying, and I felt God speak to me and say that it wasn't my time and He'd saved my life because He had a plan and a purpose for my life. Firstly, I thought, who are you, God? And how can this be? I'm an atheist. And I said, well, God, if you're real, I need you to show me who you are or what you're about. I cut a long story short, I got wheeled in on a wheelchair onto a plane, wheeled next to a man who introduced himself as a pastor, and he said, as a leader, and he said, Jesus has put you in the seat for me to tell you the gospel. So 13-hour flight from Brisbane to Bangkok, and I got to hear Genesis to Revelation. But having grown up in a world where you are a monster of iniquity. It is amazing what God can do. See, the trouble between March 2005 and my actual born again experience in 2007 is that I resisted the call of God, and for those 2 years things didn't get much easier. I found myself in Israel working and filming a society there called Taglit, which is a Hebrew word for birthright Israel, and the Hezbollah war broke out there, so I saw the intensity of living in Israel during wartime, and I was told that Jordan was a neutral country with Israel at the time, and because I've been traveling with the soldiers of the IDF, I had an Israeli Defense Force shirt on, playing soccer in Amman with local Muslim kids, and many kids started gathering around the soccer field, and I thought, oh, what's happening here? And then I got ripped and pushed and shoved. Next thing I got kicked, and I realized that my life was in danger, and I prayed, God, if you're real, save my life, do a miraculous miracle here, and if you save my life, I'll serve you. Mind you, it had been about 1.5 years since the situation with being hit by the truck, so a taxi came around the corner, came through the crowd of people. As I hopped in, a foot kicked me in the face. I closed the door. They took me to the Australian embassy. The taxi driver wanted more money for saving my life, but I wouldn't give it to him. He was furious. He tried to get to me, but he couldn't. There was armoured guards with machine guns at the entrance. At the embassy there, I explained the situation. They took me around a back exit with a car with tinted windows into a bank with Jordanian dinar and US dollars to the border, where I miraculously, after they'd shut down the border during wartime to get into Israel, because I was flying out of Tel Aviv the next day, I got through, our bus got pulled over in there, and I eventually got back home. And I had said in March 2007, I was at the wall about a week and a half before this happened in Amman. I was looking over the Garden of Gethsemane in Israel, and I felt it was almost like the internal audible voice. I felt God say really strongly that Jesus is coming back in my lifetime, and I got the fear of God. I ran to an internet cafe and said, look, I emailed a Christian that I knew, and I said, when I come back to Australia, I'm going to move into a Christian house with you guys. So I got back to Australia, I moved into the house of those guys, and it was March 2007. I gave my life to Jesus, and I gave my life to Jesus. I mean, I gave my life to Jesus. My time, my emotions, my tithes and offerings, my money, my finance, I gave him my whole heart. And it was in that moment when I surrendered everything that I really saw the miraculous. My speech changed, the way I think, the way I do things. God opened up doors. He gave me a wife. He delivered me of drugs and alcohol, pornography addiction. I didn't even know what that was. You know, all these things delivered, set free, whole and healed in Jesus. And I tell you that the trusting in the finished work of the cross of Jesus really, really works. From someone who was a monster of iniquity, that loved atheism and enjoying sin, and would make a mockery of Christians. My father and I would laugh at Christians as they walked past and thought how pathetic it is they believe in the invisible God. But I tell you, the invisible God lives inside of me. Christ in me, the hope of glory, and He is real. He's a Redeemer, and He truly transforms the human heart. He is unbelievably miraculous, the power of God for those who trust and surrender and spend time in His Word every day. I want to tell you, and I promise you, that He'll do the same for you if you absolutely surrender every single part of your heart to Jesus, because trusting in Him is the best decision I ever made in my life. A lot of my friends now have died in their sins as young people, and some that are still living in their ways but barely holding on, living in turmoil and living in the fruits of a sinful lifestyle. But I tell you, trusting in Christ and being connected to a local church is far wise, far wise than any decision. And having grown up in that environment to what I feel and experience now, and what I've seen of the reality of the gospel and how it truly is real, I guarantee, and I just commission anyone, give it a go with all of your heart, all of your mind, all of your soul, and all of your strength. It'll be the best decision you've ever made, and you'll never, ever look back.